Hello, my name is Omar Dixon, and I'll be going with the Flying Geese model, problem 1. Case 1. Is the Flying Geese model a model of import substitution, export promotion, or something else? Explain. So essentially, one of the definitions of all three criteria for this question. Import substitution. Import substitution involves extensive use of trade barriers to protect domestic industries from import competition. The strategy is inward oriented in that trade and industrial incentives favor production for the domestic market over the export market. For example, if fertilizer imports occur, import substitution calls for an establishment of domestic fertilizer industry to produce replacements for fertilizer imports. Export promotion, which is essentially export-led growth or export-oriented policy. This strategy is outward-oriented because it links the domestic economy to the world economy. Instead of pursuing growth through the protection of domestic industries suffering comparative disadvantage, the strategy involves promoting growth through the export of manufactured goods. Trade controls are either non-existent or very low, in the sense that any disincentives to export resulting from import barriers are counterbalanced by export subsidies. Industrialization is viewed as a natural outcome of development instead of being an objective pursued at the expense of the economy's efficiency. The Flying Geese model. So, the Flying Geese pattern of economic growth in which nations gradually move up in technological development by following the pattern of nations ahead of them in the development process. For example, Taiwan and Malaysia take over leadership in apparel and textiles. From Japan, as Japan moves into higher technology sectors of automotive, electronic, and capital goods, a decade or so later, Taiwan and Malaysia are able to upgrade to automotive and electronic products, while apparel and textile industries move into Thailand, Vietnam, and Indonesia. Okay, so now take a further look at the Flying Geese model. The import of consumer goods increased from T1 to T2. So along this curve here, from T1 to T2, imports increase. At T2, domestic demand becomes large enough to set up optimal scale plants, making it possible for profitable domestic production to begin. Thus, at T2, the production curve starts to increase in consumer goods. So we can move down here, and boom, that's what the production curve is. And the imports of capital goods also rise. So we can move over here towards capital goods, and capital goods begin to rise. When production becomes equal to the domestic demand, since demand equals production minus export plus import, at T3, this point here, export then begins to increase. So now at T star, capital imports begin to decline, making trade balance. So as T star, once it meets this optimum here, imports begin to optimize and then decline, and then bring about production of capital goods. This situation reflects a successful implementation of the catching up process of the industry concerned along the sequential path of import production and export, which is the basic pattern of the Flying Geese model. Now the industry is able to turn from import substitution during stage 2 toward export-led growth. Okay, so import substitution and the Flying Geese model connection. At the second stage of growth of an underdeveloped nation, domestic production of imported goods is initiated. With the domestic market as an outlet, development of consumption of imports is nothing less than an establishment of the foundation for self-production. Further, national economic policy stimulates this trend towards domestic production when it appears. Economic policy involves extensive use of trade barriers to protect domestic industries from import competition. Essentially, the infant industry theory. Trade and industrial incentives favor production for the domestic market over the export market. Export promotion and the flying geese model. So the connection lies where at the third stage of growth, domestic consumer goods industries develop into export industry, promoting growth through export of manufactured goods. So, in conclusion, the flying geese model is essentially a combination of import substitution and export promotion at different stages of the flying geese model. Case 2. How does the flying geese model thrive on diversity? Okay, so the diversification of products is thus classifiable in two patterns. One is an intra-industry cycle created by the emergence of new products within an existing industry. For example, from cotton to wool, then to synthetic textiles. Or from crude and simple goods to complex and refined goods. The other is an inter-industry cycle exhibiting the development of a new industry. For example, textile to steel, to shipbuilding, to autos, to computers, or from consumer goods to capital goods. Each cycle, either intra or inter-industry, repeats the basic flying geese pattern, enhancing efficiency and competitiveness of an industry, which may be called an rationalization of production. The inter-industry cycle also raises value added and brings about growth of an industry. On the other hand, a diversification of production through inter-industry cycle upgrades the structure of industries and exports. Thus, the interactions between and parallel progress in the rationalization and diversification of production stimulate national development. Okay, now we go into case 3. Does the flying geese model have a proposal in a case where diversity becomes very low? Explain. So, we go into the case 3 explanation. When diversity becomes low, pro-trade oriented foreign direct investment and agreed specialization is implemented to maintain diversification. Pro-trade oriented foreign domestic investment occurs when comparative advantage is lost in one production, so its production can be moved to the country with low wage level by foreign direct investment, and products are imported reversely. It can reduce costs domestically due to a rapid rise in wages. Agreed specialization within the regionally integrated group, offshore procurement, and manufacturing are agreed. By mutual liberalization of trade, the country can fill the falling part of diversity at a lower cost. Okay, so we move back into the flying geese model once again. And essentially, we will say this is, an advanced nation. We're going to stick with this portion. So, export of consumer goods continues to rise and to peak at T4 and then decline because such labor-intensive goods are losing comparative advantage due to the rapid rise in wages. So as we can see here, exports, boom, optimizes, then starts its decline. Which, however, is a benefit to economic growth. The undeveloped nation, which wages level is much lower, now begins to produce consumer goods. This production is facilitated if the advanced nation make foreign direct investment by transferring capital, superior technology, managerial skills as a package to undeveloped nations. This enhances the productivity of advanced nations' foreign production, which represents a comparative advantageous industry in the underdeveloped nation. Meanwhile, the advanced nation of capital goods increase with a large scale of production and reduced costs. So essentially, this model will be flipped, where this would be the advanced stage, the advanced nation, and at T4, once again, they begin to decline. Exports then increase once they diversify in capital goods. Okay, that concludes my presentation. Thank you.